Well, here we go. This is video number 5. Hopefully we'll get through the bracketing and into the scoring and let you know a little bit more about how to run the program. Available at streetplay.com. We're into the scoring, bracketing, finish, and away we go. So, where we last left off is we have everything into the bracket. Everything is seated, and there's a couple more options that we can deal with here. There's one other seating option that wasn't explained, and this is bracketing in the seeds list. This seeds list is actually from seed 1 to seed 16. You could add, if you had the extra information on the end of it, you could actually look at that extra information here as you go through this. Some people use this to seed with the coaches watching so they can see where the seeds are because they have trouble jumping around looking at where the seeds are. It's the same idea. The only thing is there is no random shaker. The whole names list here is a random shaker, so you can randomly draw all of the names in here. So most of this is seeded one by one and then randomly draw the rest. Anyway, back here, the last item to show is this change bracket names by team. What may happen after you've done all the seeding is that some team comes along and says, oh, I misspelled a name, so what we want to do is we want to change that name for that team. Or there might have been 3 or 4 names that the coach wanted to change. So we find the school, we get the whole team from the brackets, and of course this is a very small team, and what happens here is maybe this Barrett only had 2 T's on the end of it, and then this Shep only had, and it had the E on the end, so now we've got that changed. There may be a case where, hey, I had found another wrestler and you want to put him in the tournament because there was a buy at 145. So what you can do here is you can actually go and type that wrestler's name in, and then you'll see that name back. I'll put it in 106. So we'll type in a name. We'll call him Casey Short. And I'll just hit enter, and it actually puts the abbreviation on it. I've done some cap locks changes, but that's all right. We'll get rid of it anyway. So we go return to the, oh, we didn't put them in there. So no, I don't want to do that. So I'm going to send them to the brackets. Then I return to the bracket, and you'll notice Casey Short ends up here in the names list. I could actually send him into this by clicking here and then double clicking him into that particular location. So those are things that you can do. Of course, you're going to have to find another ID badge and all this other stuff in that part of the bracketing. We move on now to scoring. Of course, you've printed your brackets probably from here as you went through the brackets, and you may have printed the bout sheets. After you saw the numbers on the brackets that you can print the bout sheets as well. We go about halfway through the tournament and print an announcer's list after you've got halfway seated. So the announcer can get things started, and the bout sheets are ready, and we get started on time. Then we go to scoring. Scoring is not very difficult. The first thing you want to do when you get to the scoring screen is you want to process the buys, and that's right down here. We process buys, and we're going to pick the session, the first session, and then go ahead and process the buys for all those, and it shows all those buys. You'll see little pluses on the ends of the names of wrestlers who got buys, and that is because that is how the program figures out that they got to buy the previous round and give them 2 advancement points when they win the next round. So that's the setup for how you process buys. You can reverse the buys and then go back and look at a chain. When you had a buy get replaced by a person, you can go ahead and reverse the buys, replace the person, and then process the buys again because that wrestler doesn't get a buy the second time around. Anyway, we exit there. From entering the bout results, pretty simple. You get the bout sheet from the table, and you type in the bout number 1, and you see 2 wrestlers. You have 2 options. You could click on the name, and that would be the winner, and the loser would be X'd out, or you could actually type in a number. You can type in a 1 or a 2 for the winner, and there's an option for a 3 if they're both disqualified. And that usually only happens on the second day when somebody doesn't make weight, or both of them don't make weight. So we enter the bout results, 19 to 3, and we hit enter. Now that's going to be scored as a technical foul, and you'll notice over on the scores that his team got 3.5 points. You could put a T fall in there, or anything that starts with a T would be scored as a technical fall. For bout number 2, well, we have a winner here, and so we put in, I just entered number 2 instead of clicking on it. And here the score was 5-4. But this was an overtime round 4 ride out. So I'm going to put an OT at the end of that. And some people put a 4 here, or put a parentheses 4 there, or some of them even put an RO at the end for a ride out. So we know how that whole overtime match went. Then we hit enter, go on. You'll notice they scored 2 points because it was just a decision. Bout number 3, we have a winner here, so we're going to click on that one, and this time that score was 18-5. This will be scored as a major, 13 points. He scored 13 points for that. You'll also notice that was bout number 3, and it jumped to bout number 5 because 4 has already been scored as a bye. If you type in bouts out of order, it'll jump over the ones that have already been entered. So we can go to bout number 5 and put in the winner there. And that winner got a pin, so we're going to type in pin. And the time. It's important that you put in the times because the program will actually find out the most pins or the quickest pins or the most pins in the least amount of time. So you want to keep the time in there. We go to bout 6 and we put a winner in there. 6-1, and we have a winner in bout. We jump past 8 because it was a bye, and we get to bout number 8, and we have a pin in, say, 45 seconds. So we hit enter. Now, that weight is done, and you'll notice we're on weight 106 still because that was the last bout. But if we hit enter on bout 9, it jumps to 113, which means we're all done with 106. You can see that in print options. If you go to the bracket, we can see the bracket. And that's 113, which shows the buys. So I'm going to go backwards to 106, and you'll notice they're all done. You can go down to the consolation and see consolation. They're all filled in here as well. So we're going to exit that, go back to championship anyway, and then we're going to exit that. So we know that we could go to print options and print bout sheets. And the session starts at 113, so I know that I'm going to print 8 more bouts. So I add 8 to 112 and get 120. So that would be the 113th to 120th. We also need to choose what kind of form you're using for bouts. Again, you've probably already done this because you're already entering bout results, but this is how you'd enter it. So type that in, type what you want to do, and then press apply print, and this will print only to the printer. So you don't want to do this other than to the printer. Other things you can do, you can actually print the bracket at that time, and team scores. We can look at team scores. This gives us the array and the team scores, and it shows first of all the team scores there, and no, I don't want to print that to the printer, and no. So this will show how many points each wrestler for those teams scored. The buys don't score any points, so you see there won't be 8 wrestlers who have scored points, only 6. In the bracket, back to the bracket, we can actually print an HTML file for that particular bracket. So we're at 103. We can create that by hitting enter. It says, do you want to create the HTML? Yes. And then we go ahead and it says bracket 106 sample, and it gives the year. So we hit save, and that saves the HTML. And you can actually, if you've got a Wi-Fi program on the same computer, you can run that, copy that to that particular location and have it be shown. That can be done throughout the tournament. And at this point, we have to stop.